Trump declares U.S. in armed conflict with drug cartels, by Ellen Mitchell. President Trump has declared that the United States is now at war with drug cartels deemed by the White House as terrorist groups, giving legal rationale to U.S. military strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea last month, according to a confidential notice the administration sent to Congress this week. Trump determined that the United States is in a non-international armed conflict with these designated terrorist organizations, said the notice, sent to the National Security Congressional Committees and obtained by The Hill. The president directed the Department of War to conduct operations against them pursuant to the law of armed conflict, the notice adds, referring to Trump's new designation for the Defense Department. The United States has now reached a critical point where we must use force in self-defense and defense of others against the ongoing attacks by these designated terrorist organizations. The New York Times was the first to report on the notice, which comes after the Pentagon conducted 3 military strikes on boats Trump has claimed were carrying drugs bound for the United States. The attacks killed all 17 people aboard the vessels, with the administration insisting they were lawful despite no public proof that the boats contained drugs.
But Democrats insist that Trump must seek war powers authority from Congress before conducting such operations, which is true, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, he does have to seek lawful authority from Congress per the Constitution and the law. The president cannot just unilaterally conduct war on by itself. The notice did not name any of the cartels now deemed terrorist organizations to be targeted. The Pentagon also has not provided a list of the designated organizations that are part of this effort, which frustrated some of the lawmakers who were briefed, the Associated Press reported. Citing a U.S. statute requiring the sitting administration to be exact, provide reports to Congress about attacks or hostilities involving the U.S. military. The notice again lays out Trump's earlier claims that it was acting in self-defense in striking the boats, thus eliminating the threat posed by these designated terrorist organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, we're not facing any threats. Donald Trump is just testing his powers because he is attempting to make a power grab, ladies and gentlemen, illegally and unconstitutionally. It also presents several new assertions, including that the administration has determined that the cartel's actions constitute an ongoing armed attack against the United States. No. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no scientific evidence or legal evidence for that matter. Again, Donald Trump is just testing his powers and grabbing power illegally. Again, the president, per the law and the Constitution, cannot just conduct war operations by himself. He has to have permission from Congress. Continuing with the reporting. Quote, they illegally and directly cause the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans, citizens, each year. These groups are now transnational and conduct ongoing attacks throughout the Western Hemisphere as organized cartels, unquote. The notice states, quote, therefore, the president determined these cartels are non-state armed groups, designated them as terrorist organizations, and determined that ladies and gentlemen, that their actions constitute an armed attack against the United States. Again, ladies and gentlemen, no, it does not constitute an attack on the United States. Donald Trump is just illegally and unconstitutionally grabbing power. He has to have, per the United States Constitution and the law, permission from Congress to conduct war operations. He cannot unilaterally just conduct operations. The notice also justifies the U.S. military's most recent public disclosed strike on a boat, the September 15 attack on a vessel that killed the people on board who the administration labeled as unlawful combatants. Again, ladies and gentlemen, he has to have permission by Congress to conduct war operations. He cannot unilaterally just conduct war operations by himself. He's just illegally grabbing power. Quote, the vessel was assessed by the U.S. intelligence community to be affiliated with a designated terrorist organization and the time engaged in trafficking illicit drugs, which could ultimately be used to kill Americans, unquote, according to the notice. Quote, this strike resulted in the destruction of the vessels, the illicit narcotics, and the death of approximately 3 unlawful combatants, unquote. It adds that the U.S. forces, quote, remain postured to carry out military operations as necessary to prevent further deaths or injury to Americans, citizens, by eliminating the threat posed by these designated terrorist organizations, unquote.